Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. In early autumn, the air in the small town of Maplewood turned crisp, hinting at the impending winter. Nestled among a cluster of aging oaks and whispering pines, the town felt utterly still. The usual sounds of children playing at the local playground placed by an unsettling quietude, while the vibrant hues of red and orange painted the landscape. The atmosphere weighed heavy, a foreshadowing of the darkness that would soon unfold. Marilyn Carter, a dedicated reporter for the Maplewood Gazette, had spent the last decade documenting the town's unremarkable events: a lost dog, a community picnic, a local bake sale. Yet beneath the veneer of an idyllic life, shadows lingered. It was on a Wednesday morning, when the fog clung to the chilly air, that the police were summoned to a scene that would shatter the town's calm. An elderly resident, Mr. Hemmings, had been a pillar of the community, known for his friendly smile and stories that danced between reality and folklore. When he failed to show for his usual morning coffee at the diner, concerned neighbors went to check on him. Inside his modest home, they discovered a sight that would send ripples of fear throughout Maplewood. Mr. Hemmings lay sprawled in a corridor, his lifeless body surrounded by a pool of fresh blood. As the coroner arrived, Marilyn's instincts kicked in. The familiar setting of her town now felt foreign, marked by dread and uncertainty. She could sense the prevailing thought among residents, a question echoing in their minds: who could commit such an act of violence in a place like Maplewood? Deciding to dig deeper, she stepped back into her old role as investigator, determined to unearth the truth, even if it meant unveiling the town's hidden fractures. The victim, Mr. Samuel Hemmings, was a man woven into the very fabric of Maplewood. At 78, he was not only a lifelong resident but a storyteller whose vivid recollections brought the past to life for men. He had been the town librarian for over 20 years, nurturing children's curiosity and guiding local book clubs. Even in his retirement, he was a staple at community events, with an encyclopedic knowledge of the town's lore and history that captivated anyone willing to listen. His modest home, where the unfortunate event took place, was a reflection of him, cluttered yet cozy, books piled precariously on every surface, and the faint scent of old paper and leather lingering in the air. Friends would often drop by unannounced, drawn by the welcoming sight of Samuel's porch, adorned with a colorful assortment of flowers he tended with deft hands. Neighbors had noticed a shift in his routine. A few days prior, Samuel had become more withdrawing from his usual engaging self. The line of concern in his friends' voices swelled when they spoke of him. Whispers of falling out with his estranged son and disillusionment regarding old friendships intertwined with murmurs of his discontent about the current state of Maplewood's future. Investigators arrived to piece together the puzzle of Samuel's life. His death bore the mark of calculated malice, rather than an impulsive act of rage. Each facet of the investigation seemed to spin a web of contradictions. Who would want to harm a man so beloved? The scene spoke volumes. Samuel had put up a struggle, having tried to defend himself against an unseen assailant, yet his life was not without shadows. Buried secrets threatened to surface with each description of that fateful morning. As Marilyn sifted through her note, the question took root within her. What lay hidden beneath the tales of a beloved librarian, and how would that knowledge reshape the town's memories, all now tainted by blood? The crime scene. The crime scene was secured with yellow tape that fluttered gently in the morning breeze, a stark contrast to the somber reality it encased, as officers donned their latex gloves and made their way inside the modest home. A heavy tension filled the air. It settled like dust, reminding them that something sacred had been violated. The dimly lit corridor was unremarkable, adorned with framed photographs of family and friends. Yet it now served as a haunting backdrop to a horrific act. Samuel Hemmings lay sprawled on the crude wooden floor, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. In-melt blood pooled beneath him, soaking into the fiber of the rug, which had once been a warm beige but was now starkly stained. The most striking detail was the expression frozen on his viscera, mix of disbelief and dread, a testament to the surprise of betrayal. Lead investigator Detective Sarah Caldwell surveyed the scene with a practiced eye. She noticed the lingering smell of something acrid in the air, perhaps a sign of the struggle that had ensued. There were scuff marks by the front door, which suggested a violent confrontation. Caldwell's brow knitted as she noticed something peculiar in an overturned chair nearby, its legs seemingly kicked out from underneath it. It hinted that Samuel had fought hard, that he hadn't gone down easy. Finding a bloodied handkerchief in the hallway made her heart race. It bore a faint initial stitched in the corner, a clue that could perhaps connect to the victim's history. The thought emerged in Caldwell's mind. Samuel's life wasn't just marked by honor. It was fraught with tangled relationships and unresolved conflicts. Back outside, Marilyn watched as the coroner carried Samuel's body away. The weight of that moment lingered in her chest. A beloved librarian, a gentle storyteller, silenced forever. She felt an urgency, knowing she must unlock the truth of the man behind the community's cherished recollections. Behind every story lay a secret, and this one had written the first chapter and a tragedy that would haunt Maplewood for years to come. Eerily investigation. As the sun climbed overhead, casting long shadows across the crime scene, the initial investigation began to take shape. Detective Sarah Caldwell called her team together, setting a steady but urgent tone for the day ahead. We need a complete background on Samuel Hemmings. Talk to anyone who knew him, friends, acquaintances, even strangers, she instructed, her voice firm. Look for anyone he may have had a conflict with. The team dispersed, each investigator preparing to follow their lead. Caldwell contacted the local school, where Samuel had volunteered, eager to gather insights into his relationships and potential grievances. Just as she suspected, several students had cherished memories of his storytelling sessions. Yet as they delved deeper, whispers of discord began to surface, rumors of a disagreement with his estranged son, Mark Hemmings. Meanwhile, Marilyn began her own inquiries, driven by the urgency of uncovering the truth. At the cafe, she struck up conversations with townsfolk who knew Samuel. Initially, the tales were laced with affection, his gentle demeanor, and the way he made children's eyes light up with wonder. Yet, gradually, the mood shifted. He was a stubborn man, said Edna, a longtime friend, her voice dropping as she leaned closer. He liked to do things his own way. Not everyone appreciated his opinions. Word of the tragedy rippled through the town, igniting a spectrum of reactions. Some mourned. Others felt anger toward the unknown assailant. Marilyn picked up fragments of conversation, whispers about his misspent youth, an old feud resurfacing, neighbors implying that Samuel had been hiding more than just books behind those walls. As the day grew late, Caldwell felt the weight of uncertainty press down on her. So many stories, and yet the pieces remained scattered. The victim's life, his relationships. The tension that could express itself in violence was becoming a complex tapestry. But one thread stood out. Someone in Maplewood, or animosity toward a man who meant so much to me. The irony was palpable, and it left a bitter taste in her mouth. The tranquility of their small town had been shattered. Now, the hunt for the truth would plunge them deeper into the complexities of human nature. The dead ends. As the investigation marched into its second week, the initial fervor began to wane, replaced by a tangle of dead ends and unanswered questions. Detective Sarah Caldwell found herself surrounded by stacks of witness statements and notes, each one adding layers to the enigma of Samuel Hemmings' life. The weight of the task pressed heavily upon her shoulders. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that the town of Maplewood was not what it appeared. Interviews with Samuel's friends unearthed some inconsistencies. One neighbor, Martha, swore she had seen a tall figure exiting Samuel's home just moments before the police were called. But when pressed further, her description turned vague, evolving into a mash of colors and shadows that conflicted with what others had reported. Another friend, Carl, painted Samuel as someone who had recently condemned the growing commercialization of the town, an opinion that didn't sit well with others. Yet when approached, many in town vehemently denied holding any resentment. Frustrated, Caldwell decided to focus on Samuel's estranged son, Mark, whose name lurked in the undercurrents of conversations she gathered. When she tracked him down, an uneasy tension filled the small cafe where they met. Mark, a burly man with sunken eyes, bristled at her questions, his defensiveness palpable. He admitted to having a fragmented relationship with his father, but claimed he had no reason to harm him. Still, a hint of anger flickered in his voice, and his alibi for the night of the murder proved to be conveniently vague. Meanwhile, Marilyn found herself caught in a whirlwind of rumors and speculation spilling from the townsfolk. A few claimed Samuel knew something he shouldn't have about a local business owner, while others launched into wild theories of a hidden life-year secret that could have led to his untimely demise. But every lead she pursued slipped through her fingers like sand. Hours melted into days without tangible progress, leaving her feeling as if they were grasping at smoke. Every turn delivered disappointment, dwindling the hope of swift resolution. The vibrant community of Maplewood, once a harmonious blend of lives intertwined, began to fracture under the weight of mistrust. As shadows deepened and nights grew longer, the investigators faced the difficult truth. Every question's raised seemed to give birth to two more, offering no solid ground to stand upon. The search for answers felt akin to wandering in a maze, with hidden corners that led only to confusion, as they sought to piece together the life of a victim and the dark consequences of buried truth. A break in the case, just as hope began to fade amid the myriad of false leads and vague testimonies. A breakthrough finally emerged, like a ray of sunlight piercing through a dense fog. It came unexpectedly on a chilly Tuesday afternoon, when Detective Sarah Caldwell received a phone call from the coroner's office, his voice tinged with urgency. "Detective Caldwell, we conducted a deeper analysis of the blood samples found at the scene," he stated, words rushing forth with significance. "We discovered traces of a rare medication, something not typically prescribed in the area. It might lead us somewhere. Drawing endless breaths of anticipation, Caldwell jotted down the details. The medication was an antidepressant with limited circulation, specifically linked to boutique pharmacies catering to a small demographic. Quickly, she ordered a search through local pharmacies in nearby towns for any recent prescriptions linked to Samuel and, more importantly, to anyone on the periphery of his life. As she pored over the names of patients, one stood out. Claire Meadows, a familiar name in Maplewood. Samuel had often mentioned her as a regular at the library, someone who had frequently participated in community events. Yet under a veil of recollection, Caldwell remembered rumors, whispers of an unfulfilled romance and bitter jealousy that had taken root, souring their once amiable relationship. With renewed vigor, Caldwell reached out to meeting in a small corner of the library where they had both found solace. The air was thick with an unspoken tension. Her demeanor was visibly shaken upon being confronted with the details surrounding Samuel's murder. Claire shifted in her seat, her eyes darting from Caldwell to the nearby shelves, recollections wrestling within her. Sure, we had our issues, Clara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But I would never have hurt him. I cared for him in my own way. Her emotions displayed a fragile mix of pain and resolve. But Caldwell could sense the subtle dodges in her words. She prodded deeper, asking about her interactions in the days leading up to the murder. But the language of evasion thickened, leaving Caldwell with lingering doubts. As the meeting concluded, Claire nervously fumbled with an ornate pendant around her neck, taking a shaky breath. Unbeknownst to her, a small yet crucial detail, a pill bottle tucked inside her purse, had already begun to raise questions in Caldwell's mind. Once again, the shadows of Maplewood loomed overhead, and as the pieces began to fit together, they hinted at a poignant truth. Not everything is black and white, and motivations can wear the guise of affection when betrayal lies just beneath the surface. A suspect. As dawn broke over Maplewood, Detective Sarah Caldwell reviewed her notes, her mind swirling with the implications of Claire Meadows' intricate web of emotions. The feelings of care and resentment seemed to intertwine within a complex tapestry, a dangerous combination that could easily lead to unforeseen consequences. Caldwell sensed that Claire had once held a significant place in Samuel Hemmings' life, but how that translated into the events of his death was what troubled her. After some deliberation, Caldwell decided to pull Claire in for a formal interview, but she needed to tread carefully. Emotions were volatile, and she had to extract the truth without triggering further defensiveness. She arranged for Claire to meet at the police station, the sterile walls a stark contrast to the warmth of the library they had last occupied. As Claire stepped into the room, her composure appeared outwardly steady, yet a flicker of apprehension danced in her eyes. Caldwell settled across from her, ensuring her manner remained calm and respectful. Claire, thank you for coming in today. I'd like to continue our conversation about Samuel. There are pieces of his life that don't seem to fit, and I think you hold vital information. Claire's posture stiffened slightly, but the veneer of her defenses began to crack. Caldwell maneuvered the conversation delicately, weaving through Samuel's past, Claire's memories, and the relationship dynamics that had played out like a slow burr. Whenever Caldwell mentioned the medication, Claire's gaze dropped, pulling a tightened response from her lips. Yes, I was prescribed that anxiety. Depression, Claire confessed, her voice catching. But it didn't make me a monster. You can't pin this on me just because we had our disagreements. Every word she hurled seemed to reveal another layer of her insecurities, painting a picture of a woman emotionally submerged, yet desperate not to be seen as a sus. Caldwell pressed her, treading the line between empathy and interrogation. I understand you had a close bond with Samuel, but it appears the bond was frayed. Tell me about your last interaction. With a shuddering breath, Claire recounted their last meeting in argument that had spiraled over finances and accusations of betrayal. As she sought clarity and her chaotic emotional landscape, her eyes welled as unchecked emotions spilled forth. But with each admission, Caldwell caught subtle inconsistencies in Claire's narrative. The tension felt palpable as Caldwell noted Claire's shifting expressions. One moment, she appeared vulnerable, the next distant and cold, as though her heart wrestled with a tide of unresolved sentiment. Was it love tinged with fury, or something more sinister? Each lingering pause, each sudden deflection, burrowed deeper into Caldwell's resolve. By the end of the interview, Claire exhibited a mix of anger and heartache, and as she exited the station, Caldwell remained anchored by an undeniable thought. Claire Meadows held a significant piece of the puzzle, but was she merely a pawn in someone else's game, or was she a player, hiding deadly secrets behind the mask of sorrow? The trial. The buzz of nervous energy filled the Maplewood courthouse as onlookers shuffled in, eager to witness the trial of Claire Meadows, now the prime suspect in the murder of Samuel Hemmings. Tension hung thick in the air like a storm about to break, whispers flitting between friends and neighbors who never imagined their serene town would become the backdrop for such a tragic unfolding. As the jury took their places, Claire sat at the defendant's table, her figure dwarfed by the imposing presence of courtroom officials. Her eyes betrayed fears. Unspoken, this was a moment that would determine not just her fate, but the carefully constructed facade of normalcy in Maplewood. Detective Sarah Caldwell watched from the rows behind, her heart heavy with the weight of a haunting uncertainty. Had she built a case solid enough to stand against the scrutiny of justice? The prosecution began its case with a calculated presentation. They outlined the events leading to Samuel's death, illuminating Claire's past with evidence of their fractious relationship and the prescription medication found in her possession. The prosecution painted a narrative of a woman pushed to the edge, driven by jealousy and resentment to commit an irreversible act. Witnesses spoke of Claire's interactions with Samuel with the tension of their arguments, and her less than subtle hints about feeling betrayed. Testimonies painted a grim picture, weaving through whispers of broken trust and jealousy like needles through fabric. As each statement echoed off the courtroom walls, Caldwell felt unease quiver through the crowd. Defense attorney Mark Matthews countered fiercely, urging the jury to resist the easy path of assumption. He depicted Claire as a flawed but caring individual who would never harm. With each soft-spoken word, Claire's vulnerability was laid bare, prying the jury's empathy even as they wrestled with the evidence presented by the prosecutor. Caldwell leaned forward, pressed against the railing, determined to catch every nuance of the exchanges. Moments of emotional fragility in Claire served to complicate the narrative further. Was she truly capable of murder, or merely a victim of the spiraling chaos surrounding her? Matthew's strategy hinged on showcasing Claire's mental state, urging that the medication would have affected her judgment. As the defense unfolded its case, a familiar figure reemerged. Mark Hemmings, Samuel's estranged son. His unexpected testimony transformed the trial's focus. Mark appeared shaken yet resolved, revealing fraught emotions toward both his father and Claire. It was clear he bore a heavy burden of guilt. Yet his anger flickered dangerously close to the surface. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably as Mark described the hostility he remembered, when the three of them would encounter each other, a confluence of heartbreak and suspicion swirling around unresolved relationships. As his words filled the courtroom, it ignited discussions among jurors, reopening wounds and questions that had lingered unanswered. And then, as the trial progressed, the finale drew near. The deliberations would lead to a verdict innocent or guilty, with lives forever altered in either direction. The town held its breath, battling the swell of emotions, waiting for a resolution that could finally put the tragedy of Samuel Hemmings to rest. But as the gavel echoed, it was clear that the truth, complex and multifaceted, was a murky horizon that would take far longer to reveal than anyone could have anticipated. The aftermath. The sun hung low over Maplewood, casting long shadows as the trial concluded, leaving the town in a state of fragile tranquility, punctuated by the tumult of unresolved questions. Claire Meadows, acquitted of the murder charges due to lack of evidence, walked out of the courthouse a free woman, but with an invisible burden lingering on her shoulders. Though proven innocent in the eyes of the law, the whispers of guilt clung to her like the fog on a winter morning, an indelible mark in the small community she once called home. As residents began to process the verdict, an emotional rift unfolded. Bitter feelings surfacing masked the warmth of camaraderie, the loyalty of friendships, tested by the specter of betrayal. Some rallied around Claire, offering support and understanding, while others remained skeptical, their voices tinged with suspicion. Rumors about her involvement would continue to reverberate through the air, fracturing the illusion of security that had once characterized Maplewood. Detective Sarah Caldwell felt the weight of the aftermath settling heavily on her heart. The echoes of court findings flashed through her mind, replaying moments of whispered confessions and carefully curated stories. Despite her convictions and the investigation she had carried out with determination, the shadows of doubt still loomed in her thoughts. Had they overlooked vital clues that might have proven Claire's guilt, or had the community lost touch with the very essence of truth amid a haze of grief and betrayal? Days turned into weeks, and as the leaves turned golden on the trees, the unease within the town morphed into an insistent. Small incidents signaled a fracture. Fights erupted at the local diner, neighborhood gatherings soured, and the very sanctuary of their picturesque town began to feel like a facade unfit for the truths buried beneath its root. Marilyn Carter, the intrepid reporter, found herself at the center of the storm. Tasked with penning opinion pieces that tried to bridge the widening chasm between town members, she found inspiration eluding. Every time she put pen to paper, it felt as though she were bandaging a deep wound that refused to heal. The complexity of Samuel Hemmings' life, the darkness wrapped around the final chapter of his story, haunted her. She resolved to uncover the narrative threads that could bring clarity to the strife that had enveloped Maplewood. And in the bitter quiet following a storm, whispers floated around town, urging Caleb to dig deeper. Those who had once praised Samuel's lessons at the library now spoke of another Manon, whose anger simmered quietly beneath the surface, who had made enemies amidst the friendly faces of me. Those true stories, wrapped in layers of heartache, led Marilyn to realize that the consequences of the murder had reached further than any single act of violence. It had revealed the fractures of humanity, buried under festering secrets. As the crisp winter air began to descend upon the town, a profound change loomed just on the horizon, a collective introspection that would demand each member of Maplewood confront their own complicity in its darkness. The quest for healing would not come easily, but it would be a necessary endeavor to reconcile a past stained by blood and betrayal. As the investigation tugged at the threads of their lives, the people of Maplewood would soon discover that understanding the depths of loss was ultimately the only path to reclaiming the light. Reflection. As winter settled over Maplewood, a hushed stillness fell upon the town's residents. White snow blanketed the rooftops and streets, muffling the sounds of life, as if nature itself sought to provide a momentary reprieve from the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Yet, in the quiet aftermath of the trial, reflection brewed voices, unseen, wrestling within the hearts of the townsfolk, a profound realization that they had collectively stood at a precipice, staring into the darker corners of their own souls. Marilyn Carter found herself sitting in her favorite cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee intertwining with the winter air. She watched as people shuffled past, their faces etched with uncertainty, some still grappling with the impact of Samuel Hemmings' murder. Their memories flooded her thoughts: smiling children, cozy gatherings, and the harmonious life that had thrived here. Yet now, the town felt as though it had been forever altered. The shadows of the past whispered unresolved questions, urging her to confront not only the intricacies of crime, but the complexity of the human heart.